All right, let's talk Palantir. This stock has been on an absolute roller coaster lately. So in this explainer, we're going to cut through all that noise and really decode what the charts are telling us. Our goal here is pretty simple. Let's try to understand the key signals that could point to where PLTR is headed next.
And this is really the big question on every investor's mind, isn't it? After a massive run-up, Palantir has pulled back. So is this just a healthy correction, a chance to buy the dip, or is it a warning sign of more trouble ahead? Well, to figure that out, we've got to decode the technical clues.
So, first things first. Before we dive into all the fancy technical indicators, we really need to understand the big picture. See, every stock chart tells a story, and believe me, Palantir's is a pretty dramatic one. Let's set the stage.
And when I say dramatic, I mean it. Just look at the last 3 months. The stock has swung all the way from a high of 190 down to about 119. That kind of volatility tells us one thing for sure. Buyers and sellers are locked in a serious tug-of-war.
And this, right here, is the central conflict in Palantir's story. If you zoom out, what do you see? A really strong long-term uptrend. But when you zoom in on the recent action, you see a lot of short-term weakness. So the key question becomes, which one of these forces is going to win out?
All right, time to put on our detective hats. In this section, we're going to start digging into the technical indicators. Now, don't worry about all the jargon. Just think of these as clues, like fingerprints left behind by the market, that can help us get a feel for the stock's health and where it might go.
Okay, our first clue comes from something called moving averages. The easiest way to think about these is like the prevailing winds of the stock market. They just smooth out all that day-to-day noise and show us the real underlying direction of the trend, whether that's short, medium, or long-term.
Now this table, it illustrates that core conflict we talked about perfectly. Just look, the current price is below its 20-day average. That's a clear sign of short-term weakness. But, and this is a big but, it's still comfortably above its 50 and 200-day averages. This confirms that those long-term prevailing winds are still pretty strong.
Next up, we have the MACD. I know it sounds super complicated, but all it really does is measure momentum. Think of it as the oomph behind a price move. It just tells us if a recent trend is gaining strength or if it's starting to lose some steam.
And for Palantir, well, the MACD is giving us a pretty clear warning sign. It's suggesting that the powerful upward momentum we saw not too long ago is beginning to fade. So that's another piece of evidence pointing towards some short-term weakness, or at the very least, a period where the stock might just go sideways for a bit.
Our final indicator is the RSI. I like to think of this one as the stock's energy level. It tells us if the stock has been running a little too hot and is now overexerted, what traders call overbought, or if it's been pushed down too far and is now kind of resting or oversold.
So Palantir's RSI is sitting right at 49.7. And since anything between 30 and 70 is considered neutral, the stock isn't screaming that it's overbought or oversold. It's just sitting right there in the middle, kind of waiting for its next clear signal. Now that we have those clues in hand, let's turn to what I think is the most important part of this whole analysis, the price battleground. This is where we'll identify the key levels where the fight between buyers and sellers is happening right now. The two most important ideas here are support and resistance. Just think of support as a floor that the price has trouble falling through, mainly because that's where buyers tend to step in. And resistance? That's the ceiling that the price struggles to break above, because that's where sellers often decide to take their profits.
So this slide here, it maps out the entire battleground for us. You've got the ultimate ceiling, the big one, at that recent high of 190. Then there's a smaller hurdle at around 181. And right now, the price is just caught in the middle of all of it. The crucial floor to watch is right around 177.70. If that floor breaks, well, the next major line of defense is all the way down near 169.34.
Okay, so we've gathered our clues, we've mapped out the battleground. Now for the final section. What does it all mean? Let's zoom back out and look at the two most likely paths forward for Palantir, based on everything we've just seen.
It really just boils down to this. For the bulls, the optimists, if the price can hold above that 177.70 support floor, it's got a real shot at rallying up to challenge that 190 ceiling. But for the bears, the pessimists, if that floor breaks, the price could easily fall to test that stronger support level down around 169.34.
And that really brings us to the key takeaway from our entire analysis. Despite all this short-term turbulence and choppiness, the bigger picture, that medium to long-term uptrend, is still intact. This recent weakness hasn't broken the overall positive story, at least not yet.
So here we are. Palantir is basically caught in a technical no man's land, squeezed between a critical floor and a heavy ceiling. The short-term momentum looks weak, but that long-term trend is still strong. And that leaves us with one absolutely fascinating question. Which side is going to flinch first?